G'day everyone. Yesterday I went to a Sony meetup here in Melbourne. They have one each month in each state of Australia. The great thing was I was able to take my Sigma lens. So I've got the Sigma 105. Well, it's not mine. It's actually lent to me. But I wanted to take this Sigma lens to try it against the Sony 135 because I knew Greg, who was there, had one. He got his delivered a couple of days before, so I thought what a great time that I could go and test both lenses against one another, and even to compare them against the G Master 85 1.4 as well. So I thought I'd do the test all together. Now the main reason of doing this was also to show the working distance that you need to work between the 105 and the 135, how far you have to be away from the subject if you want to get a whole person's body, the full body shot in. And so what I've done is I've tried to match the shots through each camera and each lens, and at the end I'll show you the working distance between the 105 and the 135. And I've tried to do a full body. I've also tried to do a sort of head down to the waist, and also a head and shoulders as well. So we can look at all those. We can look at the sharpness between the two of them. Now, the other thing was, with this sharpness test, I wanted to do it wide open. Remember that the Sigma, say for instance, will sharpen up a little bit if you go to 1.8. So I may do another test this week sometime where it's shot at 1.8 to do a direct comparison between, say, the Sigma and then the 135. But I wanted to do this test wide open just to see what these lenses were capable of shooting wide open. They're all outstanding. They really are outstanding when you think that there hasn't been any sharpening done at all. I've just tried to match exposure. The problem was on the day, we only had a few minutes to shoot this because Greg had to leave to go to a camera store before it closed, so we only had a few minutes, and the issue was that it was cloudy and sunny, so it did change all the time. So that may have also had an issue with the sharpness as well, and I'd love to know more of you guys that do more of the pixel peeping if you think that would have had an effect on the sharpness due to the fact that it gave more contrast. So I'd love to know your opinion about that in the comment box down below. But what we'll do is we'll have a look at these and just see how they go. So what we're going to do is, let me switch over to Lightroom, and I'm going to bring up the two images. So what it will be is, the one on the left is the Sigma 105, and the one on the right in this case is the 85mm. I've just tried to sort of frame them as close as I could. I got a little bit close, I think, there with the 85. Now you'll notice straight away that the bokeh on the background of the 85 particularly looks a little bit softer, but that's due to the fact that I'm closer to the subject. So I think this is more related to how close I am to the subject rather than it being more out of focus, because they're both 1.4 lenses. If I moved in, you'll see particularly later on that the Sigma 105 really softens up if you get close to the subject. There is a difference in color here again. If you look at the tree down here, you can see that that's caused by the sun coming out on the G Master one. That's why this one with the 85 is more contrasty. And the one on the left, it was the cloud just came in at that moment. So with the Sigma 105, that's why the color's a little bit more muted, I think, on the Sigma on that side. But let's have a look at sharpness, because we'll check that just to see how sharp these two lenses actually are. Now remember, neither of these lenses have had sharpening applied at all to them, so they are straight out of camera. And to me, both of these lenses are very, very close, very close. I can't really pick much between them at all. And like I said, they've had no sharpening applied. Obviously, if you had sharpening in, they'd really crispen up. But these were just straight out of camera. The color cast difference really is more to do with one being in the sun and one being in the shade, which the Sigma was in the shade on the left-hand side. But both outstanding sharpness, outstanding separation from the background. You can see here, if you look on the left-hand side, though, what it's done to the compression. And this is where it's great having longer lenses, due to the fact of how much it brings that background in. And you can see that difference between the Sigma 105 on the left-hand side and also the 85mm on the right-hand side. Well, let's check out how it looks against, say, the Sony 135. So if we bring the 135 up, again, there's more contrast due to the fact the sun's come out. Like I said, there was nothing I could do about that in the timeline that was involved. But you can see, again, that the compression of the longer lens has brought that building way up. Now, when I show you the distances later on, that building is a long way away. Further than you think, but I will show you these working distances a little bit later on. But let's check out the color or the sharpness of the G Master compared to the Sigma 105, and this is where I do see a difference. Now, there could be two things at play here, and this is where I said I'd love to know your opinion, more of the people that review lenses and are really into this stuff. Like, I'm more into usually just capturing images. I'd be happy with either one of these images, but there is much more contrast on the right-hand side, but that's due to, I believe, the sun being out, and therefore the sharpness is sharper on the G Master lens on the right-hand side. I think it is sharper, so it's definitely a sharper lens, but I'd be happy with both of these. But again, I should also have done a test at 1.8 on the Sigma to see if that did sharpen it up a little bit, because I think it probably would. But again, both outstanding, both beautiful separation from the background here. Both extremely sharp. You almost don't need to add sharpening to either of these images. Any of my clients would be happy with those results straight away from that camera. The compression obviously is different on the 135. You can see that it's brought it up a little bit closer due to that longer lens, focal length. So let's move now up to the head, sort of down to the waist line. So here on the left hand side, let me just bring up the Sigma on the left hand side, and we've got the 85 on the right hand side. Like I said, again, I've tried to match them as close as possible between both lenses. You can see the gain that it's slightly softer with the G Master on the right hand side, but that's because I'm closer to the subject here. I just wanted to have a look at sharpness and things like that. Again, the color is hard because there was shadow on the left-hand side when we shot the Sigma, and in sunlight on the right-hand side. But again, let's check out the sharpness between these two lenses. Now, they look about the same to me if I'm looking at it. They look very, very close between the two of them. It's just a little bit different in the cropping because I haven't got the exact distance right. But again, I think they're both stellar. Again, this one looks a bit more contrasty on the right-hand side due to the fact that it was shot in the sun. Let's go now and look at the 135mm. You can see here the compression again has brought that building right up compared to the 105 in the left-hand side there. Again, the color is different due to the sun being out. Let's check sharpness of these both against one another. Again, I think the G Master is sharper. You can sort of see that in the beard and the hair down the side if you're looking at the hair down here. Both shot wide open again. And again, that could also be that the 105 is shot at 1.4, so it's a shallower depth of field. So therefore, that could cause the issue of the hair not being as sharp down the right-hand side there due to the fact that it's 1.4 instead of 1.8. But I did want to shoot these wide open just to see how they compared shooting wide open. But they're both outstanding if you look at the both of them. Again, like I said, it's more the compression that you see here. The interesting one, though, is when you start to get closer. If we look at the head and shoulders through here, you can see here that the compression again has brought that building right up, but you can still see the difference in the 1.4 versus the 1.8 here. If you're dealing with knocking the background away completely, the 105 is much softer than what the 104 is on the other side. You can sort of see that if you're looking at the dark areas through here. Like I said, the 105 is almost melted away. Sharpness again, though, I think you're going to see that the G Master is again slightly sharper, so it's definitely got an edge in sharpness. But like I said, also that one is in the sort of shade and one's in the sun as well, so it's sort of hard to say. But I think the G Master in each case is going to win. If you look at the detail in the jacket, you can sort of see that there's more detail in the jacket in the G Master than what there is on the Sony on the Sigma 105, but they're both outstanding if you think neither of them have had sharpening put on excuse me, at all. Now let's look at distances, working distances, because this is interesting. if you're dealing about that aspect of it. Now, this is the thing I want people to understand, that when this is how far I was away from that building in the background, for instance. Now here, I'm shooting with the 105. So that's showing you the distance you need to be away from your subject if you're dealing with shooting a 105mm lens. And you can see that I'm lining up here with the N in the standing, and that shows the distance there, because I'll show you a side view in a second, and that'll give you an idea about that. If you look here, this is the side view, so you can see that I'm against the N, almost level with the building there, and you can see the working distance between the two of us shooting there. So you do have to be an awful long way away from your subject to shoot full body. Now this is the 105. If you go to the 135, well then that's completely different, because you can now see I was standing at the end there, level with the building. I've now probably gone back over 2 meters further back to get the 135, and therefore, like, both of these lenses, you're going to struggle if you're dealing with tight environments, particularly the 135, and that's something you've got to understand when you're dealing with these, that these two lenses really are more primed to be shooting head and shoulders and things like that. If you're doing head and shoulders or half body, you can get up reasonably close. But if you are trying to get full body shots, you have to step back a long way. And that's sort of showing you about how much the compression was working on these lenses to bring that building back in, which I love, particularly if it's something you really want to sort of highlight, and it's great working with those lenses in that regard. But overall, really fantastic. Like, I'm happy with all of the 3 lenses that I tested. If you're working in a close space environment and you need to do full body, well then obviously the 105 has an advantage, because you can use that by saving, was well over 2 meters. I could shoot full body. So if you were dealing with, say, shooting a bride or whatever, and you were working in tight environments, at least a 105 might give you the option of shooting full body, whereas that's why most of the wedding photographers will use an 85 due to that fact. But if you did want to totally, you know, like I said, get rid of that background, the 105 is beautiful. If you've got the room to move, though, obviously the Sony 135 is just outstanding. You've got that lovely compression that it will bring in, and it's incredibly sharp, and you saw that in those results that I was just showing you then. Incredibly sharp. Let me know what you think in the comment box down below, because I'd love to know your opinion. I might do a couple of other tests as well while I've got both of these lenses, but really you can't go wrong with any of them. We really are very, very lucky at this stage, you know, with what we can shoot with the Sony lenses. Apart from that, guys, I'll see you all soon in the next video. Bye for now.